Now, I really like Dragon Ball Super. For it being a series that Toriyama doesn't draw or directly make himself, I feel like it's a good answer to what happens between the time period of the Buu arc and everything before the ending of Z. We're basically seeing how Goku went from wearing these different gis as his character and the series actually progresses, ultimately symbolizing what he's learned as a character and how his journey affects him. And we're finally going to see how he ends up wearing this brand new blue gi that we see at the end of Dragon Ball Z. And speaking of the ending, it's an ending, but it feels as if that ending could be open to interpretation, with the journey of both Oob and Goku as his teacher. So if there was ever a time skip or anything along those lines, we could get this part of the story. With Super bringing all of these interesting concepts to the forefront and naturally feeling like a cohesive part of the Dragon Ball story, I just can't help but question, why do people hate it so much? You could boil it down to fans being fake fans of the series because they don't actually watch and or support it, or you could just say the people that like Super just like Dragon Ball so much that they'll mindlessly consume Dragon Ball because it's simply just a brand to them. These are Dragon Ball Super fans that like Dragon Ball heroes, play the card game, live and breathe playing fighters, read fan mangas, so on and so forth. Or you could even just boil it down to nostalgia. Nostalgia for the original Dragon Ball and Z are the reasons why nobody likes Super. Because in their eyes, nothing will live up to the standard of the Dragon Ball that they watched when they were kids. Or you could say people are just attached to Dragon Ball Super because of nostalgia as well. I could actually understand why people wouldn't like the anime for Dragon Ball Super because it does come across as inconsistent with all the different script writers for the different episodes, and in many ways it simply just feels like commercialized Dragon Ball. So I guess you could say my big question here is, why do people hate the Dragon Ball Super manga so much? People bitch about the Granola arc and the Moral arc saying that they're bad, or that they're mid or they're not as good as any of the other arcs. And me personally, after going through the series again and looking at Super not based off of my own memories that I developed holding Dragon Ball to an impossible standard to ever live up to, I literally read Dragon Ball, went through the series again, and then went right into Super. And if I'm gonna be honest with you, it practically feels the same outside of Toyotaro's art not holding the same weight and impact as Toriyama. Dragon Ball can be suspenseful at times, and you can say that there are stakes, but I find it weird how people will complain about there being Dragon Balls and how the Dragon Balls ruin the stakes, and then say Super ruins the stakes of the series. When the Dragon Balls were introduced in the original Dragon Ball and when they were in Z, whether it was the Frieza arc, the Cell arc, or the Buu arc, it still feels like there are stakes at hand. Even if you look at Super, it's still the same way. Hence, Goku versus Jiren in the Tournament of Power. There are stakes on whether or not Goku's going to win or lose or master Ultra Instinct. I guess what I'm trying to say is I find it funny how people are going to bitch about stakes when it comes to Dragon Ball Supers when the Dragon Balls have been a thing since the inception of the series. The Cell and the Buu arc still had stakes even if the Dragon Balls existed and people could get brought back to life. And that doesn't change in Super. It's just very baffling because it's such an inconsistent complaint. In a way, I just can't help but feel as if the complaints with Dragon Ball Super are a bit petty. And then that's not including how apparently a lot of people say that Goku isn't the same Goku from Z, the original Dragon Ball, and Super. Honestly, I've seen a lot of YouTube videos like this. At times, I feel like I get an idea on how they think Goku changed, but in all honesty, I feel like they just have the wrong idea on the character to a certain extent. Still to this day, they don't understand why Goku threw a Senzu bean to Cell, and they think it's inconsistent or out of character or dumb that Goku throws a Senzu bean to Moro. But in reality, this does fit his character. They even touch on this in the same arc. It's almost as if they spell it out for you, but people still don't want to accept that, and they think that Goku has changed as a character. I'm sorry, but that cannot be further from the truth. The most that I could say that would have changed about Goku is the fact that there is less opportunity for us to get epic moments such as when he first landed on Namek to fight the Ginyu Force, or when he used Kaioken on Nappa. I will admit Super does lack in that epic department, even though at times it could give some really cool moments, like when Goku is fighting Moro and he punches him so hard that the planet shakes, or when Moro tries to stick his arm through Goku. Okay, you know what? But when both of them have epic moments, so I just don't know what the difference is. Is it the way the epic moment is handled or framed? Because I can't admit that in Z, when certain moments happen, it gave a different vibe. But to be fair, every single version of Dragon Ball gives its own unique vibe. So is that really something to take away from Super? The original Dragon Ball has a different vibe from Dragon Ball Z. Dragon Ball Z has a different vibe from the original Dragon Ball. GT has a different vibe from Z, and Super has a different vibe, and so on and so forth. Even Heroes has its own crazy over-the-top vibe. You know, personally, I kind of think it's dumb seeing someone else's personal Dragon Ball fanfic throwing up in my face like Grade 8 Super Saiyan Broly, or a character like Cumber. You know, I get people like that powerful stuff, but a little too much for me. But I can appreciate the fact that it brings something different to the series, and it has a cool over-the-top vibe that you wouldn't get from any other part in Dragon Ball. It's still epic, it still does epic things, it just does it slightly different, I guess you could say. I think the Heroes comparison is kind of drastic, but I don't think Super falls that far from the tree that Dragon Ball is. If anything, I feel like it's closer to Z than anything else, including GT. I find it crazy that people like GT but hate Super. But see, me personally, I'm just trying to find the answers. I just want to know why. Can I have a conversation with somebody so I can understand why they don't like Super specifically? Why do you like GT but not like Super? What did GT do that Super's not doing? Because if anything, GT is vastly different from Z. To get back on how people think Goku's changed, I don't understand where that's coming from. Because I hear a lot of, he's not as smart as he used to be, he's not as serious as he used to be, he's dumber than he used to be. But I kind of feel like that's not a fair assessment, because this is kind of like a entire different ball game than what we were dealing with the previous series. Because now Goku is training with gods like Beerus and Whis. Like, this is a general interesting and natural progression of the powers and the series. Instead of going from planetary and galaxy level, or just the singular known universe in terms of Dragon Ball's strength and world building, we're now in a multiversal bracket. Rather than Goku learning simple human and alien-esque techniques, he's now learning the techniques of the gods of the universe. So if he doesn't master it off rip or anything along those lines, or he might seem stupid or brand new to this situation, is because it is a brand new situation. When we're talking about being at peace with oneself, with a form like Ultra Instinct, this is brand new, completely different than what Goku's had to deal with, because as a Saiyan, he gets powers off of emotion. And now he's doing the exact opposite with Ultra Instinct, getting powers from his heart being calm and tranquil. We get little instances throughout the series where Goku is working on being calm, like at the beginning of the original Dragon Ball. Mr. Popo even brings up the concept of instinct and feeling. You could argue and say that Goku is relearning the same things, but that's not what it is. To put it simply, there's instinct and then there's learning Ultra Instinct. Does that make sense? When you look at the bigger picture, this is all build up to him getting Ultra Instinct, actually mastering this feeling. Could you really say that Goku's mastered, a calm heart when throughout the entirety of Z, he was using the Super Saiyan transformation, which would be the exact opposite of him calming it? Granted, there's a moment in the Cell Saga where he does work on being calm and making the Super Saiyan form his base state, but just because he's calm in his Super Saiyan form, does that truly mean that he has a calm heart? To the degree of the angels, to the degree in which his body would move by itself. I just find that to be a very close-minded takeaway. Rather than these instances being pieces to a much bigger puzzle. Instead, we look at it as if it's a retcon or bad writing. And to me, I kind of feel like it would be foolish to let these instances in which you think just because the concept of being calm was brought up and Goku hasn't fully mastered it, because last time I checked, they never said Goku has mastered being calm or reached any form of peak spiritual power or any peak at all. It's crazy to kind of say that Goku's peaked and mastered these things when he hasn't even peaked as a character. It's like you learn a technique, right? You have to be this level of calm to maintain that technique. That is not the same thing as him learning to be calm on Kami's lookout. That's like saying because you learned the Kamehameha, you've mastered it. I just find it funny that people try and use this Cell thing to take away from Super and all this other jazz, but Goku even says himself that he had to relearn the basics. If we're talking about Goku relearning shit, is he not just doing that right here in this scene? Am I wrong for looking at this and thinking that? Like I said earlier in the video, this is further development. We're going through the process of him getting the blue gi. And me personally, I feel like if you do have issues with the manga, maybe it's because you're reading it with monthly breaks in between. Maybe you need to re-look at Z and compare the two, because they aren't as different as they seem. Granted, they're still different, but there are still qualities in Super you might be overlooking, because you might not be able to look at the bigger picture with month breaks, allowing you to forget details. And then maybe you might need to brush up on Dragon Ball Z, because God knows how long it's been since you've seen that and then took a fair look at Super. I don't know, I just had to get that off my chest. And more importantly, I wanted to spark a discussion. Let me know what you guys hate or love about Super in the comment section below. Describe to me what you liked about Z more than Super, because I'd like to know. And with all that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Y'all take it easy.